Hi guys, happy Tuesday. We did not have a lecture yesterday because you were supposed to finish your skeletal models. So hopefully you guys are working on getting those pictures taken and getting your skeletal models uploaded. Since it's an asynchronous day, we are not going to be using Peridot. You can just ignore that. You do still have a warm-up though. So make sure that you get warm-up number 24 done. Today we're going to talk about internal anatomy, and we're going to talk about the major organs and systems that keep our body alive and going in all their different ways. And then we're going to kind of focus on the cardiovascular system and how blood is able to flow through the heart and get to the rest of our body. So normally I would ask you guys, like, what are some body systems that you can think of? And you would say, like, the digestive system, the nervous system, all that stuff. Well, it's asynchronous. So I don't get to ask you those questions and you don't get to give me your answers. So that means we can just dive in to the systems overview that we're going to go over today. So first one up is the excretory system. The excretory system's job is to make sure that our body is filtering out any waste it comes in contact with. By doing this, the kidneys are also able to help make sure that our body is chemically balanced, to make sure that we have enough blood pumping through our body, and to make sure that our tissues, our body tissues, are nice and hydrated. And then anything that doesn't pass the check, anything that gets considered as waste, is going to find its way down the ureter and right on out of there. Right on out of the body, never to bother us again. Another system is the digestive system, where the major organs there are going to be the stomach and the intestines. The digestive system's job is to break down whatever food is being eaten into smaller pieces to the point that it's really not even considered food anymore. It's considered nutrients, carbohydrates, protein, fat, fiber, like all of those, because that's how our body is able to absorb it. So then it goes to the small intestines and gets absorbed, where it makes its way to the body or throughout the body to give whatever needs to be given. You got a cut on your arm that needs to be healed. Oh, well, let's send you some protein so that we can get that skin fixed, patched back up, built together, and get it gone. Oh, you're on the treadmill trying to get healthy? Well, okay then. Let's send some carbohydrates to your legs, because your legs are moving and they're expending a lot of energy, and we got to make sure that we keep enough energy going in your legs. So we're going to send some carbohydrates down there. That's how the digestive system works. We've also got the respiratory system, which is primarily made up of the lungs, where oxygen, air, is breathed in through the nose and it is carried to the lungs. From there, the oxygen is the only thing that we really end up using, because there's other things in our air, right? Oxygen, there's carbon dioxide, there's nitrogen, like there's all these other elements that we're breathing in. But the one we need is oxygen. So oxygen is the one that gets picked up when we take it and breathe it in. And once it gets into the lungs, this really interesting thing happens where the lungs and the heart being so close together, they're able to work together to make sure that the blood that's coursing through our body, that's going through our arteries, is carrying fresh, oxygenated blood, so that our body is able to stay doing what it needs. Because it's not just our lungs and our heart that need oxygen. Every part of our body needs oxygen. So that means every part of our body needs to have blood flow, because that's how all the different parts of our body are able to get oxygen. We've also got the nervous system, which is made up a lot of pretty much what's in our head. The brain, spinal cord, and then the nerves, which are pretty much everywhere. Our body is pretty much like, there's literally nerves everywhere. That's how we're able to like feel when things happen, is because of all the nerves that we have in our body. They're able to say like, hey, something's touching me in the forearm area, and I'm able to look down and say, yeah, that's my hand. Thanks for letting me know. Thank you, nervous system, for doing what you need to. The nervous system is kind of like the head honcho of the systems, because the nervous system is the one that says, you need to do this, you need to do that, and you need to get this done. They're in charge of all the other systems and making sure all the other systems are doing their job. And because the brain is included in there, that also includes all the jobs of the brain, meaning memory and learning. So the nervous system is very, very important. All the systems are important. All the systems do different things that we need to keep us living. Imagine if we didn't have nerves all over our body. You didn't know when something was touching you. You didn't feel pain or get it, like, what? That's bad for us. That's not good for us as a species from a survival aspect. So it's probably for the best that the nervous system is in charge of everything, because the nervous system really got nerves everywhere. Just looking out, making sure everybody's doing what they need to. We also have the reproductive system, which includes the ovaries, which is what we see here. There is the uterine horns and the uterine body. And yeah, you guessed it. It's a testicle, y'all. It's an animal testicle getting removed. So the ovaries are obviously a part of the female reproductive system. And the testicles or testes are a part of the male reproductive system. Each of them produce very, very important pieces related to reproduction. The ovaries produce the eggs. All these little, you see the little ovarian follicles that are labeled here, all of those are going to mature into eggs. Those eggs are going to be able to be fertilized by the sperm that is made here. And together, they create life. That is the reproductive cycle. We have the muscular system, often forgotten about. Muscular system is really important for kind of holding everything together, kind of holding our body together and allowing us to move. It also helps with things like keeping our posture, being able to stand up. Humans used to not be able to stand up, y'all. The first humans that started walking had to work really hard to make sure that our back muscles were able to support our upper half. And the muscular system also helps us to be able to stay warm. When you're shivering and you're shaking and you're really, really, really cold, if you literally start shivering, that is your body trying to make a bunch of little small movements to generate heat. That's your muscular system there. It's very important for us. There are 3 different types of muscle. So the first type is skeletal muscle, which is what we see in the middle of this picture here. Skeletal muscle, we are able to control. It's muscle that is attached close to our bones. It allows us to be able to, move our bones. So that means that's how I'm able to move my elbow. That's how I'm able to move my fingers, turn my head, is because of the skeletal muscles. I'm able to control them and say, hey, raise your right hand, or hey, look to your left, because I'm able to control my skeletal muscles. They do what I want them to. Our next muscle is smooth muscle, which, as you can see, looks pretty different than the skeletal muscle. Smooth muscle isn't found in a lot of places of the body. It's definitely like, I shouldn't say least common, but it's definitely not as prevalent as skeletal muscle. So smooth muscle is actually found in a lot of our like our internal organs. So like the lining of our digestive tract, the lining of our airways, our blood vessels, all of these smooth parts of our internal body are made up of smooth muscles to keep things moving just like they should. And the good thing about smooth muscle is that we don't have any control over it. If we needed control, if we had voluntary control of smooth muscle, we would have to say, okay, breathe in. Okay, breathe out. Okay, breathe in. Okay, breathe out. Okay, stomach, I need you to digest my food now and try to figure out how to make my stomach start digesting my food. So it's a really good thing that smooth muscle is involuntarily controlled. It does what it needs to, regardless of what's going on. That's why we're able to breathe when we still go to sleep, because our body just naturally does it. And then the other type of our muscles is cardiac muscles. You can guess where that's found, the heart. This is another involuntarily controlled muscle, meaning we don't tell it what to do. Think of all the times your heart beats. Imagine if you had to say every time, okay, heart beat, 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 beat. Like, what? When do you sleep? The answer is you don't. The other good thing is that cardiac muscle also doesn't sleep. Cardiac muscle does not get tired. When your cardiac muscles get tired, don't make me say what happens. You know what happens when your cardiac muscles get tired. This presentation is in Canvas for you guys. It's in the modules tab. So if you want to check out this video, this is just a short like intro video into the different types of muscles and how they work. So if you want to watch it, it's there for you. Getting more into the heart is a part of the circulatory system. So circulatory system is in part of circulating different things like blood. Or blood is technically like the carrier. They're in charge of carrying things throughout our body. So if we look more at the heart and how it works, we can actually see that there's different layers to the heart. So in the heart, you've got this like outer layer that is called the pericardium, which is actually, if you see this, like, I hope you guys can see it, the peachy kind of color right on the top, that's like the external layer to the heart. It's the pericardium. As we start moving our way in, we get the epicardium, which is right below. And this is just a slightly thicker, more protective layer over the heart, because the heart's very important. The heart is arguably the most important, because without the heart, nothing will be working, because the blood would not be flowing. Continuing to move our way in, then we get the bulk of the heart, which is the myocardium, which is very, very muscular. This is where the thickness of the heart comes from. And then on the inside, we have the endocardium, which, as you can see, isn't really a whole lot of muscle. It's really a lot of different blood vessels that allows things to be able to move in the heart the way they need to. The circulatory system, like I said earlier, is in charge of moving different things throughout the body, where blood is the carrier. Blood is kind of like the taxi. It's an Uber, whatever you want to call it. It is the driver. It is not the passenger. The passenger could be different things like nutrients. Maybe it stopped at the digestive, like at the small intestine, and it was like, hey, can I grab anything for you? And then they pick up some carbohydrates. So like, all right, we need to take this over there. Maybe they make a stop at the kidneys and they pick up any of that waste that needs to be gotten rid of. Or maybe they're carrying some of the waste. And then the major thing is that they move oxygen around. That's the main thing, because that's really what we need it for. This is just a bigger picture than what was on the previous slide. Nothing really major. So now we're going to start kind of getting into how blood flows through the heart. There's a lot of little different steps, and there's a lot of terminology there to make sure that you know what's happening and where. So a blood vessel is just a general term, or a vessel is just a general term. So when we talk about blood vessels, it doesn't give us any kind of indication as to what direction we're going on. So I don't know how many of you guys are good with like actual directions, but if I said you need to take 40, you need to take I-40. Well, okay, get on 40. But which way are you going? Are you going 40 east? Or are you going 40 west? I didn't say. So that's why we start getting into all of these different terms so that we know kind of where the blood's going, how big it is, and it just lets us know more about what's going on. So the arteries and the veins are the two major blood vessels that you need to know, because one of them carries blood away from the heart, and one of them carries blood back to the heart. So it's really important, especially when you consider the fact that we are talking about blood, and we are talking about oxygenated blood that's good to go and deoxygenated blood that is not good to go. It needs to go back to the heart and get some more oxygen. So arteries are the blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart. That's why we've got these two bolded A's here, because I want you to think artery, away. Artery, blood is being carried away from the heart. With veins, I don't have a catchy way for you to remember it, so I just need you to remember that if arteries mean that blood is going away from the heart, veins is the opposite. Veins are blood vessels that carry blood back to the heart. Arterioles are just smaller arteries, so kind of like the branches. If you've ever looked at pictures of the blood system or any of that, then you've got your major arteries, and then you've got all these kind of little branches that kind of spring off and go here or there or there. So those are arterioles. They're just smaller branches of a major artery. The capillary is the smallest blood vessel. It is very, very, very tiny. And it's actually permeable, meaning it can pick up oxygen, it can pick up nutrients, it can pick up waste. So even though it's tiny, it's still useful. It's just like those little itty bitty tiny cars that you see people driving around. Like, yeah, that's a tiny car. They might not be able to carry a whole lot, but you know what? It's still got wheels and they can still drive it. That's honestly the best analogy I've ever come up with. That's exactly what a capillary is. It's itty bitty tiny, but it still gets the job done. It still does what it needs to. Just because it's smaller doesn't mean it's less useful. A venule is essentially a larger vein, because veins are carrying blood back to the heart, and venules are large vessels returning blood. So a venule is it's kind of like the opposite of an arteriole and an artery, where the venule is the major part of the tree and the veins are the little branches. When we look at the heart and we look at the areas of the heart, there's actually a lot of different areas. There's a lot of steps that happen in order for blood to have to get oxygenated. So when we look at the heart, we have to again kind of separate it and figure out what area are we talking about. So within the heart, there's essentially 4 major places. in the physical, actual heart. Two of them are atria, which we see on the top. So this is an atria that I'm circling. And then this is an atria. And then we also have two ventricles, which is what this piece down here is and what this piece down here is. So for a total of 4, we have 2 atria and 2 ventricles. The atria are on the top part of the heart, and the ventricles are on the bottom part of the heart. In alphabetical order, A comes before V. So A is going to be on the top part of the heart, and the V, the ventricles, are going to be on the bottom part of the heart. The way we distinguish between our 2 atria on the top and our 2 ventricles on the bottom, and then distinguish between themselves, is by talking about left versus right. We've got our left atria and our right atria. We have our left ventricle, we have our right ventricle. And being the little carrier, the hallway, I like to think of it as a hallway. The hallway or walkway or entrance or whatever you want to call it, between an atria and a ventricle, have a name because they're like a valve. They open and say you can come in, and they close and say sorry, can't let you in. They're kind of like a bouncer, where they're like, sorry, we're at max capacity right now. Like you're gonna have to wait until someone leaves. And then when there's room, they say, okay. They open the valve, they open the door, and they say, you can come in now. Thank you for waiting. On either side, so this little alleyway right here, and then this little alleyway right here, it's not actually an alleyway. It is a valve that opens and closes. It constricts, and then it opens, and then it constricts, and then it gets open. On the left side of the heart, that valve between the atria and the ventricles is called the bicuspid or mitral valve. I call it the bicuspid valve because the other valve on the right side of the heart is the tricuspid valve. The way that I remember the tricuspid valve is with the R that's in there. There's no R in bicuspid. So on the right side of the heart, we've got the tricuspid valve. And when we're talking about the heart and we're talking about left versus right, we're talking about, if we're looking at my body right now, this is my left, this is my right. My left atria and my left ventricle are on the left side of my body, of my heart. My right atria and right ventricle are on the right side of my heart. So when you're talking about left versus right, if you're talking about your body, it's your left and your right. If you're looking at a sheet of paper, it's flipped. Your left is no longer your left. Your left is now diagonal, and your right is now diagonal. So when you guys go to label your heart worksheet, spoiler, when you go to label your heart worksheet, make sure that you flip your left and right. Make sure you flip your left and right on the worksheet. Please hear what I am saying. Please flip your left and right on the worksheet. So this is how blood flows through the body, y'all. Yes, it's a lot. For you guys and for me, hopefully when you're looking at this, it should be flipped. My right is over here, and you know what's on this side? Yep, you guessed it. The right atria and the right ventricle. And what my left is also flipped, y'all. My left is over here. But on this diagram of the heart, the left is flipped. It's on the other side, as it should be. So when blood flows through the heart, this is where you guys are really going to want to pay attention so you know how to do your assignment. Blood is going to enter through a very large vein called the vena cava. Again, V, meaning it is carrying blood to the heart. So you have the inferior vena cava and you have the superior vena cava. Doesn't mean one is better than the other. It just means that this is the vein on the top and this is the vein from the bottom. So all the blood coming back from like your legs and stuff, it's going to enter through the inferior vena cava. All the blood entering from like your head and your shoulders and your chest is going to be entering through the superior vena cava. When they enter through the vena cava, they are going to make their first stop at the right atrium. The right atrium is first. Then it is going to make its way through the tricuspid valve. That valve is going to open and the blood is going to be able to go from the right atria to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it's going to go out the pulmonary artery. What does an artery do? It carries blood away from the heart. So, pulmonary means lungs. So, the pulmonary artery is literally a blood vessel that carries blood away from the heart and to the lungs. This is all deoxygenated blood. All of the blood that is going through the heart at this point is deoxygenated. It said, I need to go back to home base and I need to get more supplies. I need to get more oxygen. It's like UPS. You finish delivering your mail. Well, you're not done for the day. You go back to the office and you get more mail. So our deoxygenated blood, they said, well, my day's not over. I need to go back to the heart and I need to get more oxygen. I have more oxygen to deliver to the body. So it goes through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. From there, it kind of sweeps by and it says, all right, I'm gonna grab me an oxygen. I'm now oxygenated. I have an oxygen, look at me go. They're really excited because they just picked up an oxygen from the lungs. Well, it's not done yet. It's just not quite that easy. They're halfway through their trip now. They can't just stop now. Their job's not done. They can't just quit for the day. So they have to continue their little trip. So when they get done at the lungs, they got to go back to the heart. The way they get back to the heart is through the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary meaning lungs, and vein meaning a blood vessel carrying blood to the heart. So the pulmonary vein is taking blood from the lungs and bringing it back to the heart. When it gets into the pulmonary vein takes it to the left atrium, where it's going to hang out until the bicuspid or mitral valve opens up. When the bicuspid valve opens, it's going to be in the left ventricle. And when it gets in the left ventricle, that's like the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, I can almost get out of here. So when they get in that left ventricle, they're beelining for the exit. They're like, we got to go. So they make their exit out of the aorta. Once they leave the aorta, which again, A means away. The aorta is a huge artery. It is sending blood off into the body. So go where you need, take the oxygen wherever you need to go. And when you finish delivering oxygen, they're gonna make their way back through the vena cava. And they're just going to continue this literal cycle all over again. They just keep doing it. They get oxygenated, and then they go into the body, and they get deoxygenated. And then they go back to the heart, and they get oxygenated. And then they go to the body, and they get deoxygenated. And then they go back to the heart. It's literally a cycle. This is just another diagram. If you wanted to like pause it and look at it, I'm not going to go over and explain how blood flows through the heart again. So essentially, they enter through the vena cava, either the superior or inferior, go to the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve, through the right ventricle, out the pulmonary artery to the lungs, comes back to the heart through the pulmonary veins, enters the left atrium, gets through the mitral or bicuspid valve, hits the left ventricle, and then makes its exit into the body through the aorta. This is a really good diagram for showing you oxygenated versus deoxygenated, showing you blood that needs oxygen versus blood that now has oxygen. It does not have oxygen when it enters the heart in the right atrium, the right ventricle, or out the pulmonary artery. When it gets back from the lungs, it's oxygenated in the left atrium, the left ventricle, and out the aorta. If that sort of model is confusing to you, this is the model that I like to think of. Like, I just honestly hate trying to look at a heart and be like, what is going on here? So I like this little box diagram. You got 4 sections to the heart. You got your right atria, your right ventricle, your left atria, and your left ventricle. And you just literally list how things go. Vena cava, right atria, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, left atria, bicuspid valve, left ventricle, aorta to body, and then back again. So what you guys are going to do in your assignment for today, you're going to label the heart that is posted. You're going to label how the blood flows through the body. You're going to tell me the different parts of the heart that we went over today. So the aorta, the pulmonary artery, the right atria, the vena cava, the left ventricle, the pulmonary vein. You're going to label all of that and how you're going to draw some arrows for how blood flows through the body. You're also going to pretty much color code for whether the blood is oxygenated or deoxygenated. Does it have oxygen or does it not have oxygen? That's all you got to do. Color code, draw the path, and label. That's all you got to do. So if you guys have any questions, then you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm still at school. I'm checking my email. I'm checking Canvas messages. I'm checking assignment submissions, all that stuff. So if you have questions, you need to reach out to me and you need to let me know. Otherwise, I will just end up seeing you guys on Thursday. I'll see some of you guys even in person. That's so exciting. So if y'all need anything, let me know. Otherwise, have a good Wellness Wednesday, and I will see y'all on Thursday.